just put some more in there. Get a bit. What? This is RTE, sorry. Welcome to FeckTV, the news at 7. I'm Noel and here with me tonight is Chris Bennett.
Thank you very much. I'm going to kick us off with the first story tonight. 2 trains have been involved in a crash in northern Switzerland. 17 people have been injured, 9 taken to hospital, although thankfully none seriously. A locomotive derailed today and hit passenger carriages side on. The trains were carrying 280 people between them, although all were safely evacuated. Luckily, I suppose, the trains themselves were moving slow enough for a larger tragedy to be avoided.
The funny thing about this story, well, it's not that funny, but the strange thing about this story is the fact that you never really hear of many incidences of train crashes coming from Switzerland.
No, they've got a pretty good reputation.
They do indeed, yeah. Like the last one that emerged was in 2010 when the Glacier Express was derailed and one person was killed. So it's kind of a strange one that, you know, it happens. But the positive, I suppose, in a sense, is that they seem to be well prepared for this type of situation, even though it's quite rare, because there were reports that
200,
over 200 safety workers were on the scene pretty much immediately. So
yeah, and I suspect they'll get to the bottom of this this pretty sharpish.
Pretty soon indeed. Okay, second up tonight is the case of Mary Fleming, the 59-year-old who today was back in the High Court following last month's court case where she was trying to she was pleading for the law to allow for assisted suicide. She was claiming that it was in breach of her rights. Unfortunately, the 3 judges came back today and kind of as expected, they unanimously voted against allowing for it. I don't think too many people were surprised, but I mean, it'd be a hugely liberal move for Ireland.
I think perhaps it was a sort of a bridge too far on this one. They actually did release a 121-page document, 121 pages of which essentially say no at the end of it. And this is really, I suppose, the reason why the family aren't fully commenting yet, because they did say that they want to read through the document carefully before they then potentially make an appeal on the case.
There were a couple of interesting aspects today to what the judges said. In particular, they called her the most remarkable witness the 3 of them had ever come across, and said she was both humbling and inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a testament to the will, you know, of going into a courtroom with this kind of situation, with obviously the illness weighing heavily on her, to actually get up there on the stand and give this kind of testimony and, you know, to the court. But I suppose the judges are in a bit of a tricky, tight spot here. I mean, there are countries where assisted suicide is legal, you know, Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and a couple of American states. So obviously, you know, they can, morally, I suppose, have taken the decision to go down that route, but it's a very grey area.
It is. I suppose the worry for the judges, as they put it, was that the most vulnerable in society would be at risk, which, you know, I can see that side of the argument, but as you said, there are countries and some states in America that allow for it. So, like, I think if the legislation and regulations were strict enough and, you know, they were controlled, then maybe there could be one day some way that it could be introduced in more countries.
I suppose it all comes down to how sort of, I suppose, advanced along with an illness a person is in terms of their ability to communicate, their ability to, I suppose, get their wishes across, and you can feel confident that it is their wishes and not someone interpreting them. Yeah,
well, I know today Miss Fleming, well, in her court case, she had said that, like, she's in the late stages of MS, which is a horrific disease for anyone to suffer from, and she's at a point where, you know, she won't be able to do anything on a daily basis. She'll have lost all control of her body, and she kind of put across, and it was quite an emotional court case, and indeed today as well, the family were in tears, understandably so, that she's pretty much a nobody, or she will be pretty much a nobody when she gets to the stage where she has absolutely no control. And that was kind of one of the reasons she was thinking that if her family were there when she herself was happy to die, that she'd feel much more comfortable. And I think her family would too.
I think I suppose it all boils down to, again, the judges will go on record and say that whilst this case being one of them where everything's laid out fine and we can kind of understand where it's going, you may get other cases where, you know, it crosses the line between, is this, I suppose, not assisted suicide, but is it some form of murder down the line, that kind of thing. So again, I can't personally see Ireland legislating it, neither the UK either, in the foreseeable future, I wouldn't suspect.
You're probably correct. I suppose to anyone out there watching it, it's worth checking out a very good documentary released a couple of years ago called How to Die in Oregon. It is one of the few states in the US that this is allowed. Just before we do move on, my last point was I was quite surprised at the absence of any voice from the Catholic Church.
Yes,
on this
because
one.
they've been so sort of vociferous over abortion.
Exactly, and there are kind of sort of similarities between the abortion debate and assisted suicide. I mean, they are ultimately both about life and death.
Yep, they are about someone taking the life of someone else, I
Exactly,
suppose.
and I was actually quite surprised myself that they didn't wheel out their good old phrase, it would lead to a culture of death, as they
Yeah,
have said
they
a
have
few times
they have
themselves.
really cornered the whole fire and brimstone on that one.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm going to move us on now
Yep.
to the Costa Concordia, which is now back in the news because this weekend is actually the anniversary of the tragedy, which happened on the 13th of January last year, if you remember. Now, Francesco Verusio, who was the first magistrate on the scene when the tragedy occurred, has gone on record today and said that the Captain Schettino, manoeuvred the vessel like a canoe. This was the 290-metre, €450 million ship, which collided with rocks off the island of Giglio, as I say, on the 13th of January last year, in which 32 people died.
Yeah, first of all, I quite like the phrase that he's used, like a canoe.
Like a canoe,
I think it
yeah.
captured the whole situation quite well. The captain, Captain Schettino, I mean, I think it's always been coming to him that he was obviously never going to get away with this, even though in the days after the accident occurred, he got the name Captain Coward because ultimately...
with good reason.
With good reason, exactly, because ultimately he did abandon the ship, took a lifeboat to safety, and apparently got a taxi to go home. So...
Yeah, it's not his finest hour, shall we say. Although, actually, the captain has now gone to the Italian media, basically complaining, saying that he's upset that he's being compared to bin Laden in the Italian media, and that his past achievements, not really particularly sure what they actually are being ridiculed.
Yeah, and
again, I don't really see he has a leg to stand on with this one.
I don't think so. And of course, the charges that are going to be brought against him,
Yep, pretty serious.
pretty serious ones. 5 staff or 5 officers as well that were on board, as well as 3 more senior officials.
Yeah, and these are the charges of
multiple manslaughter, and of course for illegally abandoning the ship.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what way we'll say the sentences come down in terms of their severity of it, because as you said, 32 people did die as a result of this.
They did, and I mean, as again, going back to Mr. Verusio, he actually said at the time that they had more than enough evidence to pretty much convict him sort of the day of, but obviously the legal process has taken this amount of time to get to it. Now, I believe there's also a UK company.
Yes, that's correct. The lawyers representing British victims, Erwin Mitchell, they've gone on record to say that they're very highly critical of the crew, obviously of the captain as well, but also of the crew, because of their tardiness in terms of evacuating the ship, because it was 1 whole hour before the ship was evacuated.
We actually have a clip that sort of illustrates, I suppose, this the sort of the thing that they're talking
laziness
about.
of the staff. You can really see, it doesn't seem that panicky, because
no, it doesn't.
as we know now, the ship went down, but you can see the staff actually just leaning against cupboards and whatnot as the water floods down the stairs. Yeah,
it's interesting to see, I suppose, really how sort of lackadaisical it is. I know you've got people running here, but the evacuation itself took an incredibly long time, far longer than it ever should have done.
Yeah. Okay, to move on from that to a story much closer to home, it has emerged that a 16-year-old girl in Ballincollig in County Cork is traumatised after incidents of cyberbullying at her school, Coláiste the Column. A Facebook page was set up called Coláiste the Column Memes, whereby basically it started off as students going on, kind of joking about secondary school life, slagging teachers.
Light-hearted fun.
Yeah, exactly. But unfortunately, it took a bit of a turn for the worse when all the comments started being directed at this 16-year-old girl, And she went onto Facebook and just dismissed him, saying, "You're sad. You shouldn't be doing this." Like pretty much exactly like anyone would react, because it's not exactly the most mature thing to do.
No.
Unfortunately, though, it took a bit of a turn for the worse after she did go on Facebook, and people started making more crude and sexual references to the girl, presumably coming from teenage boys.
Most likely. It actually, the sort of incident in question was sort of happening over December period. However, it's taken until last Friday for the girl to actually report the incident to both her family and to the school. So it gives you a little bit of a sort of a flavour of how difficult it is for these cyberbullying cases to actually come out, even to the close family,
Exactly.
for instance, in this. Now, I will say that the page itself has been closed down by Facebook with the help of the school, and they're also trying to trace those involved with the comments. Though how easy that will be is anyone's guess.
There's always an element of, I suppose, there is a strong element of anonymity when people are on this type of thing, and it makes it much more difficult for the Gardaí to track down. Of course, then they have to work with Facebook as well, and then you get into the whole privacy aspect.
Sure.
There's a whole lot of,
I mean, cyberbullying itself is a very sort of, I suppose it's a misunderstood thing. It's very difficult for people, I suppose with my generation and older, who would have children of their own, to sort of see how involved the online life is for these people.
Exactly, yeah. It is extremely important these days for any young person to be on social networks. And if you're not, you're going to be, bullied for not being there. You'll be an outcast. Really. And the thing with online or cyberbullying, we'll say, compared to normal bullying, to call it that for want of a better term, is that the bullying in the playground, it stayed there. Once the person being bullied went home, they were away from it. But now it's a case of they go home, they go on the internet, they're on Facebook, it's there again. Even if they're not on Facebook, it's still happening on Facebook or whatever website it may be.
It's certainly something that's been sort of huge in the news of late. A lot of money has been put into cyberbullying prevention schemes from schools. A lot of training has been put in place. I think it's one of those things that needs to have perhaps more involvement from the people who have actually experienced it, and from the people who are really targeted from it. So that the teenagers themselves need to have a little bit more input into these things. Because as I say, we've had tragedies.
Yeah, definitely. Last month we had the very tragic death of the two Gallagher sisters in Donegal. Right. The younger 13-year-old Erin, she first took her life, and then a few weeks later Shannon took her life, and that was all stemming, the original suicide stemmed from online bullying on Ask.fm, and then the older sister, it's understood that the stress of what happened was too much for her. It's a scary thing that it's becoming more and more frequent.
Absolutely.
And to me, it feels like the legislators are being quite slow to tackle it.
Yeah, they're playing catch up.
Exactly.
Really. And it's sort of time, really, I suppose, to sort of draw a line in the sand and get this legislation in quick and, I suppose, future-proof it a little bit more than they are doing.
Okay, we're going to finish on a little bit more of
we've got
a happier story.
A lighter note. A waitress at Roberta's restaurant in Bushwick, Brooklyn, turned up for her final day at work entirely nude. I say entirely. She had an apron, boots and fishnet stockings on with the word "Peace Out" written on her back.
That's not her normal uniform.
Not her normal uniform, no. So this sort of got us thinking, I suppose, a little bit, didn't it, Noel, about the sort of final days and how you would go out with a bang.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'd do. I feel like it'd involve a farmyard animal.
I'm terrified to get into your mind on that one, Noel. I think we'll leave that up to the imagination, or at least
I'll let that hang there for you, Chris.
Thanks, or at least for our viewers to send us their recommendations as to how to finish your final day. That was the news roundup.
Indeed, that was the news at 7
for today. Thank you for watching. Check us out on FeckTV.com.